The film begins with Marin practicing piano after school. Then, her friend comes in and tells her that her picture will not be in the yearbook and that she has not taken a picture even after being reminded 3 times. She then invites Marin to spend the night at her house, but Marin is hesitant because of her strict father who never allows her to. Her friend advises her to sneak out when her father is asleep. Later, Marin's father comes to pick her up after school and praises her driving skills. After dinner, Marin washes her face and secretly pockets the keys to the window. Going back to her room, she says goodnight to her father, and the father locks the door from the outside. When everything is okay, Marin opens the window and cautiously sneaks out to her friend's house. During dinner, a girl asks Marin where she lived before she came here. Unfortunately, Marin has no memories of her past. Her father never told her anything about her mother, and she has neither a photo nor any memories. Meanwhile, the other 2 friends finish painting each other's nails, and Marin's friend extends her hand to have her nails painted. When done, she shows it to Marin. In an instant, Marin grabs her friend's hand and cuts her ring finger, scaring everyone. Painful screams fill the room. Terrified, Marin runs away while the girls scream. She runs home and slams her fists on the door. Her father wakes up and immediately realizes what must have happened. In a panic, he quickly starts packing their things and tells Marin to gather the essentials within 3 minutes. They must leave immediately, before the police arrive. Marin wakes up in her new home. She calls out for her father, but there is no answer. She frantically looks for them everywhere, but they are nowhere to be found. On the table, she finds a tape and an envelope containing money and a certificate. She plays the tape, in which her father tells her that he is leaving just like her mother. When her father says he can no longer help her, Marin stops listening, overwhelmed with grief. Eventually, she pulls herself together and comes to terms with her situation. She takes her birth certificate and, seeing her mother's name on it, resolves to find her. Determined, she heads to the information center. Reaching the woman at the reception, Marin points to a place on the map. The woman helps Marin, but is suspicious of her attitude. Marin immediately silences her by telling her that she is 18 years old. She also shows her birth certificate as confirmation. A little annoyed, the woman finally relents and tells her that the fare to Columbus will be $49. Without hesitation, Marin pays the fare. Boarding the bus, she settles into her seat and listens to a recording left by her father, showing the first time she ate human flesh. When Marin was only 3 years old, she attacked her nanny, Penny. Upon returning home, her father found Penny lying on the bathroom floor, her body covered in blood and a horrible wound on her neck. He then noticed that Marin's mouth was covered in blood, and there was a soft, glue-like substance stuck in her cheek that was part of an ear. Thankfully, Penny was not wearing any earrings, which averted the risk of suffocation. Her father acted immediately. He cremated the nanny's body, packed up her belongings, and left her with her real name. The incident remained hidden as the body was never found. For a few years, life remained relatively quiet. Confident that Marin would be able to control her desires in public, she sits down on a bench and begins to read a book. Suddenly, she is interrupted by the rain starting to fall. She takes shelter nearby, only to notice a man watching her. Marin musters up the courage to ask if he is waiting for a bus. Shocked, the man confesses that he was looking for her. Scared, Marin asks if she knows him. He assures her that even though they are strangers, he can still recognize her scent. Marin thinks of leaving, but the man interrupts and asks when she last ate. Shocked, she wonders how he can detect such a thing, to which the gruff man explains that one's sense of smell improves with experience. He introduces himself as a fellow diner and asks Marin to follow him, saying he can bring food for both of them. She wonders what's for dinner. Being cautious, Marin grabs a rock and puts it in her pocket, so she can defend herself if needed. The man introduces himself as Sullivan, but her friends call him Sully. He reassures her that she has nothing to worry about because he doesn't eat any animals of his species. Reaching inside, Sully takes a raw chicken out of the freezer and skillfully cuts it into pieces. Marin, now relieved, confesses that she thought she was the only one of her species. During the conversation, she slowly realizes that the house isn't Sully's. He tells her to find out for herself, so she uses her sense of smell. Upstairs, an elderly woman lies on the ground, taking her last breaths. She immediately tries to find a way to help her, but Sully stops her. He tells her that this is their only way of survival, because she must eat before she can no longer control her desires. Realizing the brutality of her future, she locks herself in a room and cries. A little while later, she comes out, and the two eat the old woman. After finishing eating, Sully takes a bag out of his box and reveals a long braid made from his victim's hair. Marin asks about Sully's first experience. He confesses that he ate his grandfather. His mother had come to the scene and cleaned up the mess, lying that the incident was an animal attack. However, when Sully finally ran home, no one came looking for him. Later, while Sully is taking a shower, Marin takes advantage of the opportunity to rush through the window and onto a bus. She finds Sully staring at her in despair. On the bus, she starts listening to her father's tape again. He talks about a boy who went missing during a camping trip she went on when she was 8 years old. Unfortunately, the missing boy's body was later found, but authorities ruled it an accident. Her father regrets letting her go. He reveals that although he is not sure if he loves her as a father, he doesn't hate her at all. This incident finally made him stop attending any social events or functions. Marin arrives in Indiana. In a store, while shoplifting, she notices a man looking at her. Suddenly, a customer begins harassing a woman. Alarmed, Marin steps in, but the same man from earlier intervenes and takes the rude man out. Marin successfully steals what she needs and is about to leave the store when she smells a familiar scent. Following the scent, she sees a bloodied man leaving a deserted building. He casually passes her and tells her about the place, in case she wants to feed him too. Instead, she follows the man. She tells him she smelled him in the store and asks for help since she's new to this business. Together, they steal the dead man's truck and go on a trip. We learn that the man's name is Lee. Lee and Marin find the dead man's address and take refuge in his house for the night. Arriving at the house, Lee suddenly finds his favorite song and starts dancing to it. Lost in the moment, he jumps in front of the mirror and sees bloodstains on his clothes. He takes an abrupt shower. Marin, on the other hand, has a dream in which her father wishes her a happy birthday. Then, the next day, Lee and Marin go to a nearby restaurant for breakfast. Over dinner, Marin explains her encounter with Sully, which she found terrifying. After driving all day, they spend the night in the truck. However, their original plan to go to Lee's house in Kentucky is disrupted when he takes Marin to his late aunt's house. As they arrive, Lee explains to Marin that his house is not far away, but that she will have to hide from the city. Lee leaves to visit his sister Kayla. Upon returning, they have dinner together. However, Kayla arrives shortly after. Angrily banging on the door, she expresses her frustration at Lee's continued absence, fearing he will disappear like their father. Assuring Kayla that he is not like their father, Lee promises to return in 2 weeks. After Kayla leaves, Lee suggests to Marin that they should leave that night. He plans to steal money from the cash drawer of a nearby slaughterhouse cafe. They are able to execute their plan easily, and Lee gets enough cash to last for a few days. He then takes Marin to the place where the animals are kept. They sit there and talk. Lee gets out of the truck and walks to another vehicle where he is greeted by 2 men named Brad and Jake. They also appear to be diners. Lee introduces himself as Leon, and Marin introduces herself as Maggie. Lee is still a little tense, but Brad and Jake assure him that they have come to drink beer and enjoy each other's company. They sit around the campfire, drinking and talking. During the conversation, Jake reveals that Brad is not an eater. He eats at his own will. Jake also makes an interesting comment about whole bones, which catches Lee's attention. Jake describes it as being like eating the whole thing, including the bones. He compares the feeling to starting over for the first time, but Marin finds the idea disgusting. She leaves in anger, upset that Brad chose this path for himself. Later, when Brad and Jake fall asleep, Lee and Marin quietly leave in their truck. However, Jake wakes up and immediately tries to chase them. But thankfully, they manage to escape. The next day, they arrive in Iowa. They decide to rest and stop at an amusement park. On the Ferris wheel, Marin says she's hungry. Lee takes a look around and spots his target, a booth attendant who mistreated a kid who won a game. Lee flirts with him a bit and invites him over after his shift is over. While waiting, Marin and Lee listen to a tape of her father telling her to be a normal girl. Marin immediately stops recording. Just then, the booth attendant arrives and Lee leaves, telling Marin to wait in the truck. Marin watches as Lee meets the attendant, and they go to the address on the worker's license but find the lights on. Lee is still covered in blood, so Marin heads over to investigate. She hides behind the trees in the yard and sees a woman holding a baby. The sight stuns her. She runs back to the car. When Lee asks her what happened, she lowers the sunshield, revealing a collection of photos of the worker's wife and child. Lee is equally shocked, but tries to ease Marin's distress and repeats that they didn't know. They abandon the car and drive off in the truck. Lee tries to talk to Marin, but she is still distraught. She is concerned that they do not regret their actions and fears they will have to suffer the consequences for the rest of their lives. Eventually, they arrive in Minnesota, and Marin locates her grandmother Barbara using a telephone directory. Lee takes her to the address, and Marin sees an elderly woman outside the house. Marin gathers courage and approaches the woman and asks if she is Barbara. However, Barbara initially seems disinterested. Barbara invites her in only after Marin pleads. Barbara shares the unexpected news that Marin's mother Janelle and her father Leonard were never married. Furthermore, she did not know about her granddaughter. Barbara reveals that she and Leonard adopted Janelle. Marin urges Barbara to tell her more about her mother, but Barbara appears cautious. Eventually, she relents to Marin's persistence and reveals that her mother is hospitalized at a public hospital in Fergus Falls. Marin immediately sets out to meet her mother. Lee quickly takes her to the hospital in Fergus Falls. Marin arrives alone at the hospital, where she is met by a nurse who takes her to her mother. Her mother has both arms amputated and is mentally unstable. The nurse gives her a letter that says her mother knew she would come someday. In the letter, Janelle explains that if Marin has come to visit her, it is because her father broke his promise. Janelle confesses that Leonard did not know her true identity before Marin was born. Janelle never wanted to hurt Leonard because she loved them both very much, yet she believes she has to do one last thing. Suddenly, Janelle pounces on Marin and tries to harm her. The nurse immediately intervenes, takes charge of the situation, and tells her to leave the room. She runs outside and tells Lee that her own mother tried to kill her. She is angry at her mother for not being there for her and hiding the truth about their differences. Lee tries to calm Marin down and explain the seriousness of their situation to her, but she is adamant. While Marin is driving, Lee falls asleep in the car. She stops at a gas station, intending to refuel the truck. Taking out the money she stole from the cafe, she places it on the dashboard and leaves. Later, when Lee learns of her absence, he makes a desperate attempt to find her. Meanwhile, Marin meets Sully again, who admits that he has been following her since their last meeting and tries to convince her to go with him. A very nervous Marin rejects his offer, which infuriates Sully. He calls her names and drives off in anger. Then, Marin breaks into a nearby restaurant and destroys the tape. We now follow Lee, who is having a terrible nightmare. Immediately, he wakes up and decides to call his sister. He tells her that he is coming back home. He is overwhelmed with emotions as he realizes that he is finally returning home after months. A few months later, Marin visits Lee's hometown. She meets Kayla, hoping to learn about Lee's whereabouts. Kayla reveals that their mother has been following Lee around relentlessly, forcing him to camp by the lake. She also says that Lee has been in town for so long in the hopes that Marin would contact her. She also opens up about her abusive father. One fateful day, Kayla tried to intervene in a heated argument between their father and Lee. At that very moment, something snapped inside Lee. She begged Kayla to call the police, and when the police arrived, they found Lee covered in blood and their father's truck missing. Rumors swirled that Lee had killed their father. However, a subsequent investigation cleared all charges against Lee, as the bloodstain turned out to be his own. Eventually, Marin goes to meet Lee at the lake. They immediately embrace each other to reconcile, giving their relationship another chance. They decide to travel west together. During their visit, Lee tells Marin that after Kayla called the authorities, his father tried to attack him in a fit of rage. Lee smashed his father's head with an ashtray and then carried his body to a deserted barn. He left him there for 3 days. After being released from police custody, Lee returns to the barn, fully aware that his father knew what awaited him. Overwhelmed with grief, Lee explains that if it weren't for Kayla, he would have given in to despair. However, Marin interrupts him and assures him that if it were Kayla, he would have done the same. She insists that Kayla's actions were motivated by a desire to protect those he loved. At that very moment, she professes her love for him. Determined to start a new life together, they resolve to settle down, find jobs, and live a normal life. They have finally started living a beautiful life. They have jobs and a beautiful home. One day, Marin returns home to a peculiar smell. As she enters her bedroom, she notices an unknown bag on the bed. Suddenly, Sully pounces on her. He brandishes a knife and threatens her to keep quiet. Sully gruffly tells her that he has an unfinished business with her. However, he fails to notice Lee, who is behind him. Lee quickly covers Sully's face with a plastic sheet and tries to disarm him. Marin bites Sully's hand, causing him to drop the knife. He immediately grabs the knife and stabs her multiple times. Together, Marin and Lee manage to drag Sully's lifeless body to the bathtub. There, Marin pulls out an organ from the knife wounds. Lee, exhausted and breathing heavily, gets out of the tub. Meanwhile, Marin anxiously checks Sully's bag and finds Kayla's hair stuck in her braids. As soon as Lee enters the room, Marin realizes something is wrong. It turns out Lee was badly injured during the struggle. The wound and the realization of his sister's death leaves him unable to move. Marin pleads with him to accompany her to the emergency room, but he knows his condition will cause his death. As his last wish, he begs Kayla to eat him, bones included. If she truly loves him, this would be the easiest thing to do. In a sweet, bitter moment, they share a final kiss and Marin begins to devour her lover.